I'm Christina Watts of Ridgeside Art, and today I wanted to show you a quick and easy watercolor using just one paint, this watercolor. I would pronounce it for you, but it's extremely difficult to pronounce, so you'll just have to check it out. It's a nice dark blue. So what I've done is, anybody can do this, watercolor paper and a stencil. Stenciled my image on, and now I'm just going to sort of fill it in with some paint. So let's get going. First thing you want to do with your watercolors, if you're working wet on wet, is to paint inside your stencil with just water and let the paper absorb it. And if you get a blotch like I just did over here, it's no big deal. All you have to do is take some paper towel and blot it up before it sinks in. So I've got this all wetted, the paper's absorbing the water and it's still glossy, and now's the time to start adding your paints. So watercolor moves, it goes where the water flows, and that's just the most important thing to remember with watercolor painting is put it in where it's wet. And as you can see, this paint in particular really likes to explode on the paper, which is great. We're going to do this in a few layers. I'm just going to touch it in a few spots. I'm not even painting, I'm just letting the water do the work. And then I'll pick up my board and I'll just sort of let it move around. We're going to do 2 layers of this today to give it some nice depth. See, look at how that just exploded up there. Just loves how watercolor does that. You can also go back and erase your lines later if you want, or you can simply keep making this darker and they'll go away. The other thing you can do is you can choose to paint another color around this shape later on, and that'll hide your pencil lines as well. So I'm just going to start moving this up and down and let the water take that paint where it wants to go. These are the times that you'll start to see, you know, whether your paint is granular or not. And by granular, it means that it sort of settles into the teeth in the paper and sits there. If you do a blot outside, that's no problem. Watercolor is pretty versatile. You can just wipe them off at first. And if you really get it into the paper, use a magic marker eraser. We're going to let that crawl through, and then we're going to come back, wet it again, and put another layer on. So I'll see you in a minute. All right, we've let this dry, we've dropped in some color, we're going to do another layer on top. This time I might play with a little bit of a gradual wash. And a gradual wash is really simple. It's just, you start with your paint at one section, and then you put it in, and then all you do is add water going down. So I still want my colors moving this way. So I'm going to put some more paint. This is almost a dry brush technique, but not quite. Put it here, wash my brush off, just with clean water now and not a lot, so just a damp brush. Then I want to grab the bead of the paint and just start moving it right down. And as you can see, the watercolor is gradually moving, and we're going to take it right down to the tip. Notice how I'm keeping my board up so that the gravity takes the color down for me. So that's another thing with watercolor, move it around. Move your board around, shift the colors around. And we're going to spot in on some other sections and carry on. Now just water. This is a good way to do flowers and a lot of other projects in watercolor. Once you master these techniques, there'll be nothing stopping you. And as you can see, we've only really used one color, and it's pretty effective. those of you out there, if it's starting to look dark with your watercolors, just know that watercolors dry 20% lighter than when you first put them on. So go bolder. You'd be surprised how they just sink right back. I'm going to set this one down so that I can get my beads back. Some colors are staining and some colors are not. This is not a staining color. I've been able to lift it off. So any of these boo-boos that I make, or if I'm trying to jab away at a bubble, I don't worry about those. I can clean them up later. And I've mixed this paint with a bit of water to begin with too. So, I mean, you can fade it by adding more water, or you can go bold by not adding a lot of water. And I really love just the varied look of this style of watercolor painting. And how easy is that? How easy is it to just use a stencil and make something really cool? You can do one color, you can do two colors, you can get even more creative and do more colors. If you're only using one color, that's a color harmony. It's called a monogamous color scheme. And that's a really good one for people to play with. Now I think because I've gone a little too dark up here, I'm going to pull some of the color out. And all I'm doing is just with a clean damp brush, moving the paint around. And because I have a highlight there, one other highlight there. These are still wet, so they let me work in the time frames. Okay, we're gonna let that dry, and we'll come back and clean it up. All right, so we've let this dry, and now I'm just gonna clean up a few edges that I had boo-booed on. That happens. And this is just a damp, slightly dried damp brush. And I'm simply just running it over the edge to, this will either soften or remove. And what I did is I've antagonized the paint. And then I've essentially put water on it, and now I'm gonna blot it. And that will kind of clean up some of your lines. So if you're a perfectionist, you can keep going. If you find that this is not working for you because it may be a staining color, then what you'll want to do is either use a magic erase marker, or you're going to want to paint another color that's darker in where the white area is. I'm going to leave this because, I don't know, I think it's just something painterly about it. Clean up a few more edges, and then I'll see if I can erase my pencil lines. If I cannot erase my pencil lines, I'll grab a black pen and I'll outline it. So what I've done is I've actually put these lines on with a pretty heavy pencil, and I did them really dark. So if you're ever doing a tracing job, what you want to do is you want to do light lines with your pencil. So since I've done that, my other option is to take like a micron pen or a fine tip pen, and I simply want to take that and be very careful and just go over top of my black, or my pencil lines, with a nice black. So I'll carry on and I'll come back and we'll take a look at how this looks when it's done.